Okay, so let's start thinking about pulling together a presentation sheet. And luckily, our work is almost done for us if we think about it, because we've already done it once before. I'm going to go to the last submittals sheet, and you'll notice everything's been updated for us. This is the basic power of BIM. Our views are still there, but every modification we made to the model is reflected in the drawings. So a few things, we're going to need some space to write a narrative, and maybe we need a full view of the building. I think the section cut is really descriptive. Mostly what I'm looking for in this submittal is a way for me to actually grade it, to find out if you've completed everything. So let's go ahead and make some modifications to this. I'm going to trim this one back and make a few changes. So I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to grab the section box and I'm going to pull this back so that I can see the steel that's in there and the relationship of these elements a little better. And I'm going to drag that back off the sheet and bring it back on so our title block isn't in the way here. And actually, I'm going to rename that because I want it to be a section view. Now, something's bothering me here. I'm going to deactivate this view by right-clicking and deactivating. I'm seeing this little bit of our rear wall coming up, and that's because I made it too high. So let's go ahead and correct that. So I'm going to double click into this. I'm going to select that back wall. And remember, we want these columns to stay 2 foot above. So I'm going to take the offset of that and make that also -2. And I want you to notice what happens to this drawing down here. So I'm going to type in -2 and return. And that dropped down. And now you'll notice how that's reflected in this view also. A few other things. I want to get rid of the section box. We don't need to actually see it. So I'm going to hide in view that element. We could probably get rid of these grid elements. So I'm going to do hide in view category, and all of those will disappear. So we're all set to be able to visualize that. It probably would have been good to put a floor in, but this is kind of very descriptive. And we'll do a floor a little bit later on. Now that we've done the roof, the floor is going to be easy. And so once again, we'll deactivate this view. I'll delete it and drag it back on again. And it's called a model view. So let's just take a moment now to rename it. We'll call this the section view. And I'll drag that onto the sheet. And we'll try to put that up nice and high. Probably could go a little bit up. Let's pull it back down. I didn't realize it'd be that close to the edge. And we kind of need a little bit of a model view. I also want to save some room for you to write a narrative. So I'm going to pull this way over, thinking that maybe you could write a paragraph in here. And now we need actually just that model view of the whole completed model. So let's go to view and make that. I'm going to just click on the doghouse again, and that's going to make that 3D view. And we've got to just make the right features with it. So we want to realistically render it. We'll do that in fine detail. We'll brighten it up a little bit. So I'll go to the graphic display options. Let's get rid of the edges, smooth it out, add some shadow to it just for fun, and bring up the ambient lighting and see how that all looks. And hit apply. All right, so that's a little softer look of our model. That's okay. And then we have these elements that we want to get rid of. So I'm going to hide in view this category. We'll hide in view this category. And then we have a clean model. So we'll go back to the sheet and we'll draw, and we'll actually rename this one. I just right click on it. You could double click on it or click on it, and we'll call this model view. I'm trying to get you in the habit of thinking about creating these things like model views and that. And it's really quite large. So let's go ahead and change its scale. So I'm going to go and activate the view. And we'll get a chance to change its scale. We can do it up there or down there. Let's say we go to that size, and that seems to fit on the sheet a little better. I'm going to deactivate that view so I can drag it back on again. So I deactivate it, delete it, and I'm going to drag it back on. And I realize I'm a little bit tight here. I don't want to make this too aggravating, so I'm going to just let that. It's a bit tight, but I want to make sure that we have enough space for you to write some sort of narrative here. Let me just nurse that down a little bit. I don't like this little shadow detail here, but that's fine for this submittal. So now we can see the completed building. We can see the section view. Actually, if I click into this, maybe we could also change it to the same scale. Maybe that'll give us the same amount of space. It totally disappeared. So I'm not sure that. Let's deactivate the view. And I might have gone really huge with it. Looks like I did. Let's do Control Z and see what I did there. So it scales 1/8 inch to a foot. And I probably meant to go here instead of the other way around. We'll deactivate that view. Delete it. And drag it back on. Whoops. It's thinking, oh, that's the section view I want. That gives us a lot more space to work with. So I'll pull this one up a little bit. So we have room for our narrative there, and we're all set. A little bit of work over here. We've got our section indicator here that's hanging off of the sheet. So I'm going to click it, and I'll pull this in a little bit. And we don't need to crop all the way over there either, but that's really doesn't make much difference for this. That just neatens it up on the board. Right click to deactivate it. Now you have room to write a paragraph, a very narrow paragraph for your narrative. Once again, the idea of the narrative is just to tell me your experience, what was hard to do in the project, what you suggest I would change in the video, what you learned. Usually you say, it's the what, when, and how, or what, where, and how, what you did. It really is a chance for you to express what you were thinking while you were going through it. That's why I call it a narrative. Just to put it down in words. Once again, to reinforce that idea of connecting our language to the graphics that we do, and the idea that somebody could look at this drawing later on and kind of understand the experience and the process that you went through to create it. So our final thing to do then is to go to File, Export, PDF, selected view, pick out that view again. And I'm thinking I wanted to rename that. I'm not seeing our sheet here for some reason. There it is. I'd almost like to change the name of that, but I won't do it now. We'll select that. We've got to use our architectural D size paper. And we'll zoom it at 100%, and we'll see if that gets rid of the crop lines that we had before. We know we want it to be in a landscape mode. And we want to think about where we're going to save it. And I'm going to save it out to the place where I'm doing all my work. So it's in my D drive, in my videos, this is CV3 in process, and I'll give it a name. Submit. And I'll move my head so you can see the, oops. Oh, I don't need to name it. It's going to automatically name it. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was creating a folder name and I didn't want to do that. I just want to save it into CV. And now it'll go into that folder for us. And I'll hit export. And we won't save that for this lesson. And let's go ahead and while we're waiting for that, I'll call it up. I'll call it up on my screen so that once it's completed, it should show up in this folder. And I might hit pause because that seems to make it do a quicker rendering of it and then come back. Okay, so there's our walls, our file CV3 walls, which is the last file name I used. I'm going to double click on that to open it, and then I just have to find out where it is so I can get it on the desktop for you. And I'll drag that over so you can see it. And we'll zoom it to fit. And now we don't have those borders around, and we have the whole layout for us. So the only thing we're missing is the narrative for that being a submittal as a PDF file. One of the other things is maybe to check, I'll do that afterwards, check to see the file size. See, I'll do that right away. Let's see what the file size is on that. Let me just roll over this. That's 1.22 or 23 megs, which is fine for submittals. So we're good to go with that.